Hello and welcome back to Meat City Gaming. JD here with the first episode in a brand new series that I'm trying out, Know Your Tanks, here in World of Tanks on the console version. And the goal of this video is to help players identify the tank that they may be facing in a battle. Most players will be familiar with the statistics and capabilities of the tank that they're driving, but you may not know the capabilities of the tank that you're up against. And even if you do, some of the tanks have wildly different capabilities based on what package they're currently equipped with. A stock tank versus a fully upgraded tank. The T29 is the tank that I'm going to showcase in this video, and it is one of those tanks. The stock tank has a 76mm gun with extremely low penetration and bad alpha damage, and the top gun on this tank is a 105mm that is absolutely devastating, but has a fairly long reload. So what I'm going to try and do here is cover the statistics of the tank based on the different packages and guns that it can have, and then we'll go into some ways to identify which tank it is that you're going to run into on the battlefield. Some quick tips on what you can look for on that tank when you're going up against it, and that will allow you to quickly identify which version of the tank it is. Now, of course, if you're a veteran player with 5,000 or 10,000 games under your belt, some of these tips you may already know, and this may not be the series for you, but there's plenty of newbies out there who have come over from the PlayStation version or who may not be as familiar with the game, so this is directed to them. If you are one of those veteran players, by all means, if I miss something or if you have a tip or trick related to identifying the tank quickly on the battlefield, leave a comment below. I would really appreciate it. So let's get into the T29. Comes with a choice of 3 guns. The stock gun is a 76mm, the middle gun is a 90mm, and the top gun is a 105mm. And I'll put the stats up on the screen for each of the guns, and we'll start with the 76mm. So this is the front view of the 76mm gun on the stock turret for the T29. There are 2 turrets for the T29, and the first thing that you can do to identify whether the T29 is going to be a major threat or how big of a threat the T29 is going to be is by looking at its turret. And as you can see on the upper left and right sides from the front, there are no extra boxes or little wings that stick out. You'll see on the second gun what I'm talking about. If they're missing, then this is going to be the stock turret for the T29, and if it's the stock turret, then this tank is not using the 105mm. So from here, it might seem obvious. Look at how small that gun is. You can tell that's not the 105mm. But in battle, in the heat of the battle, you may not be able to see the whole tank. You may not have a side profile. So these are just things that, while I'm showing them clearly here in this view, in the heat of the moment, hopefully you'll be able to pick up on some of these features of the tank to help you identify it. So from the front, if there's no boxes on the upper side of the turret, it's the stock turret. And if it's the stock turret, it's not the 105mm gun. You can see how short and kind of goofy this gun looks on this tank. And so it is very small. You can tell the length is very short, and the turret has no boxes. So that is the 76mm gun on the stock turret. And once again, we'll go to the other side. Also notice the muzzle brake. One of the big identifiers between guns is going to be what the end of the muzzle looks like, and you can see there is a double split at the end of the barrel. There are 2 holes along the length of the barrel that you can also identify. The 105mm, as we'll see, is smooth all the way down. There is no muzzle brake at the end. There are no holes that you can see from the sides of the tank. So this is the rear view, and then we'll circle back around, and so you can just get a feel for it. The turret is very similar, except for those ammo boxes. I think they're ammo boxes, whatever they may be, wings that stick out on the sides of the tank. So if they're using the 76mm, then you know their penetration value is going to be extremely low. It's 128. If you're in a heavy tank and you see the stock turret on the T29, you got to feel pretty good about your chances of engaging this tank in terms of armor. If you're in a light tank with no armor, though, then you need to be aware that the rate of fire for this gun is extremely high. It's over 16 rounds per minute. Now the penetration is low, but if your armor is very weak, then that's not going to be much of a concern. So now we have moved over to the second turret and the middle gun. This is the 90mm gun on the second turret, and here you can see on the upper left and upper right, you can see those little wings sticking out. Maybe they're a periscope or some other function for the tank. But if you see those, then you know the tank is using the second turret, the fully upgraded turret. And with that turret, you could use any of the three guns. You could use the 76mm, you could use the 90, or you could use the 105. But I can't imagine anybody in practice actually using the 76mm if they've got this turret unlocked. So if you see the wings, then you pretty much can eliminate the 76mm as a possibility for the tank or the gun that you're going to be facing. Once again, though, you can see that the gun has the double muzzle brake. So it is a bit longer than the 76mm, but other than that, the turret is the fully upgraded turret. So if you see the wings on top of the turret, then you know it's the fully upgraded turret. And if you see a muzzle brake or holes in the muzzle, then you know it's the 90mm and not the 105. And so the 90mm gun has a bit better of a punch in terms of penetration. It goes up to 160 millimeters of penetration. And so again, only your most heavily armored tanks, again, if you're a tier 9, you probably don't care, but evenly tiered and below, only the heaviest armored tanks are going to be able to reliably bounce the 90mm gun. The average damage for this one is 240, and the rate of fire is a bit slower. It's basically half of what the 76mm is. This gun fires almost 8 rounds per minute. So again, keep that in mind. Know the rate of fire of your tank, and then compare it to this one. If you're going to take a hit, well, know if you can give 2 back in time. If you've got a really rapid firing gun, you might be able to get 2 off before this guy gets 2 off at you. So once again, keep in mind the wings on the turret here. You can see them very clearly from the back. They're sticking out the left and the right. And the muzzle brake means it's the 90mm gun. And finally, the Big Daddy, the 105mm gun on the fully upgraded turret. Once again, you can see that the turret is fully upgraded by the boxes sticking out the upper left and upper right of the midpoint of the front view there of the turret. And you can see once we get to the side view here that not only does the gun look very large and look very long compared to the other 90mm and 76mm, but there are no muzzle brakes at the end. It is a smooth barrel all the way down in terms of the outside, not talking about rifling on the interior, but there are no muzzle brakes or holes visible along the length of the gun. And if you're facing this gun, then you are facing a very, very dangerous tier 7 tank. Maybe again, if you're in a tier 9, you might not be as concerned, but you probably are, because this gun has 198 millimeters of penetration on its standard rounds. The damage, average alpha damage is 320, so it packs a punch. The only advantage that you gain if you're facing this tank and you see this gun is that the rate of fire drops. It now fires just over 5 rounds a minute. So if you're in a rapid firing medium tank or light tank, you might be able to get off 2 or 3 shots in exchange for every one that the T29 gets off at you with the 105mm gun. So if you can make the T29 miss that shot, if you can get up on the lateral side of the tank and kind of wiggle back and forth and make them snap a shot and miss it, well, then you know you've got some good time there that you can get your 2 or 3 shots in, do some good damage, or get away, disengage before they're able to be reloaded to put their next shot into you. So the Big Daddy gun, you want to see the turret, fully upgraded turret, if you see the boxes on there. But then look, you can see this gun. If you see the side profile of this tank, it is a long gun. You can see that its diameter is bigger than the 90mm, but the biggest giveaway is that there are no muzzle brakes at the end of the gun. So that's it. That is the T29 and the 3 guns available to it. Hopefully this gives you a little bit of a tip on what to look for when you're engaging these things on the battlefield. Again, this is a brand new series, something I was kind of toying with. I thought it might be useful to some of the players out there who are not experts at World of Tanks. This is certainly something that I struggle with myself in a battle, trying to figure out which gun it is on a tank that I'm facing. You know, you can always take a hit and do the math and figure out, oh, that was 320 damage. Well, I guess he's using the 105. But if you're able to do that math in the heat of the battle, then, you know, more power to you, because not something that I can do reliably for sure. So I thought it might make sense to put a little series together, and while I'm doing these series, I'll actually be teaching myself the tank that I'm highlighting and the strengths and weaknesses of the different guns and the identifiers for those different guns. So if you have any thoughts on this series, again, this is just something I'm trying out. I'm hoping it'll be helpful to people. Feel free to leave a comment, give me some feedback on this. I want this to be a little bit more of a polished series going forward. I might put together some kind of intro graphic or something like that. Maybe you'll see it on the beginning of this video. Maybe I'll get this first one out and see how it's received and then go from there. If there are tanks that you're interested in me doing this kind of review for, this kind of identification of the gun choices on it, feel free to leave a comment. Let me know which ones you're looking at. Certainly some of the tanks in the game won't lend themselves to this kind of review. The RU-251 gets the same 90mm gun no matter which package you have. So obviously, if you run into that tank, you know what you're dealing with. There are no different guns to discuss. But a lot of the heavy tanks especially can have varying guns. Some of the autoloaders can have varying guns, and it'll change the number of shots they have in their clip, which is an important factor when you're counting the shots in the autoloader, trying to figure out when they're on their reload. So some of those might make sense as well. So time for the summary. If you see the turret without the rangefinder boxes where the circles are right here, then you know the T29 is using the stock turret. If it's using the stock turret, it is not using the 105mm gun. It's either using the 76 or the 90. The only difference between those guns is the length of the barrel. It's a little bit difficult to tell, so assume the 90 if the tank is using the stock turret. Here you can see the fully upgraded turret, and it can use any of the 3 guns, but you can pretty much rule out the 76mm if you have the stock turret, because you automatically have the 90mm upgraded if you've gotten that far. The 90mm gun has the 2 muzzle brakes circled in red at the end of the gun, and the 105 has the smooth barrel without any muzzle brakes at the end. So that'll hopefully give you the knowledge that you need to address this tank, to identify it in the field, and know what gun it is that you're up against, and approach the tank appropriately in the battle. So that concludes this first episode of Know Your Tanks. Hopefully some of the tips that I outlined in this video will help you identify the tank when you run into it in a battle, and you will therefore know the capabilities of the tank and you can approach them appropriately. If you guys enjoyed this, if you found it useful, please feel free to give a thumbs up. And if you want to stay tuned for future content, hit that subscribe button. More videos coming each and every week. Thanks for joining me.